Hey everyone, so today what I wanted to talk about is the Race to World First, which is a community event held in both Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft, where groups of players race to be the first to clear a raid tier. I am just going to flat out say it. Blizzard could learn a lot from Final Fantasy XIV. Just for complete transparency and clarity, I am coming at this from the point of view of a viewer, not a participant. While I do love to raid, pushing for World First is, well, it's beyond me. But before getting into what Blizzard could do better, let's talk a little bit about Final Fantasy XIV's race, which I wound up enjoying an awful lot. The reason I actually wanted to watch it was because the top two guilds in WoW were going to be in this race. Those guilds being Limit, who went by Elephant Herd for this, and Echo. I don't know why, but I was morbidly curious to see how these World First guilds would do in a Final Fantasy XIV race. So, how did they wind up doing in their very first race in Final Fantasy XIV? They did really good. How shocking, right? There is obvious overlap between the skill sets in these games, and if you got really good at one of them, it's reasonable you could get really good at the other. Anyways, Elephant Herd managed to snag 38th place. Not bad for their very first experience in a Final Fantasy XIV race, right? Echo, who progged this race completely blind by the way, managed 56th place. By completely blind, I mean they didn't look at other streams that were more progressed. I do wonder how well Echo and Elephant Herd will do if they decide to participate in the next race, since I'd imagine this race was a bit of a learning experience. Now, when it comes to who won the race, the Team TPS, or Thoughts Per Second, took the world first, and was almost 2 hours ahead of their nearest competition. I looked through past races, and TPS is relatively new, entering the races in 5.1, which released a little bit over 2 years ago. They dominated that race, with about a 13-hour lead on the kill, and came in third in 5.2, and since then have been getting nothing but first. Anyways, what I think would be really cool is if in the next race you had multiple teams at the final boss at the same time, and they are all really close to the kill, and the winner could literally be the next pull. This is a little bit of a sidetrack, but I have a huge DDR background. The rhythm game, not the memory. And I love competing and playing that game to this day. My point, when there's a tournament and the difference between first and second boils down to a single point, well, that creates insane amounts of hype. I guess it's also fun when someone just completely dominates and it isn't even close. But what do you all think? Is it more fun when it's really close, or when a team just completely dominates? Anyways, I mentioned earlier that Blizzard could learn a thing or two here. What I mean is, I think the way that Blizzard goes about releasing their raiding content leads to a less enjoyable race. At least for me. I know plenty of players love it, but these issues diminish that enjoyment for me. They can even trickle down to other raiders. You know, those not in the World First race. So, what are these issues? The first issue I want to talk about is the PTR, or Public Test Realm. Essentially, Blizzard has their players do some QA for them here, where they test a variety of things, including raid encounters. That means before a raid has been officially released, there are players that have not only seen the encounters, but also have direct experience with them. This includes on the highest difficulty. Any guild who is at least semi-serious about progression will go to the PTR to test out these fights. I never really found it to be all that fun whenever I had to go on the PTR and tested a raid encounter. They are buggy, incomplete, and unbalanced. Like I said, some of this stuff even trickles down to non-World First raiders. Anyways, the way I look at it is, it's like the race already started before the raid was even released. That is such a far cry from how 14 handles their QA. There is no PTR in 14. All the testing is done in-house. That is so much more fun as a raider, because you don't have to test an encounter that is full of bugs and unbalanced. And it makes the race more interesting, because it is truly blind. Now, I have no idea how viable it would be for World of Warcraft to drop the PTR raid testing. In my experience with the game, whenever they don't test a boss in PTR enough, they are released in some pretty sorry states. The other big thing is that there is no global release in WoW. The patch that has the raid is released on different days, depending on where in the world you are located. This was always the big one for me. How is it a fair race when different regions have to start at different times? On the other hand, Final Fantasy XIV has its patches released globally, and sure, it can be annoying if you happen to be in the region where the patch drops at 3 in the morning. But at the end of the day, if you are in a race to world first team, your sleep cycle is completely borked anyways. These teams raid for like 18 hours before stopping. But yeah, having everyone start the race at the same time makes the race better. As a viewer, I am more engaged with it when I know that everyone is on equal footing. There are no lingering questions in my head over who may or may not have an advantage. Finally, something that happens way more than it should in World of Warcraft is, raid encounters have been released in states where the fights are buggy, overtuned, and even have mechanics that need to get reworked. But what really takes the cake for me here is, they do this during the race. Like, okay, imagine coming up with a strategy, spending time on perfecting it, and then the developers come along and hotfix the fight, completely nullifying that strategy. Now, speaking as a raider, that would infuriate me. Speaking as someone following the race, that would seriously make me question the integrity of the race. This happened pretty recently too, on World of Warcraft's last raiding tier for its final encounter. One of the team members of Echo, a team that we spoke of before, tweeted, "Okay, this is just sabotage at this point." Because yeah, their strategy was completely nullified. Whatever lead they had was diminished. Now, Final Fantasy XIV has been pretty amazing with the polish of the raid encounters. From what I can understand, they haven't had to change a raid encounter in some time now. They did have their fair share of issues in the past, but it looks like they have been able to learn from their problems and iron those out. You know, before playing Final Fantasy XIV, I used to just think that the way WoW did things was just how things had to be done. You needed a PTR to do QA testing. Raid encounters, they needed to be tuned up and polished after their release. Globally releasing patches? That couldn't work. Now that I know it doesn't have to be this way, I can't help but wonder why it is. If the team behind Final Fantasy XIV can manage these things, then surely the team behind WoW could also manage, right? Anyways, that is all for this video. I hope you are all having an amazing day. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider leaving a like, commenting, and subscribing. Until next time, bye!